Welcome back to the show. I'm Joe Concha along with Rick Unger, Heather Hansen, and Brad Hirschfield. A new poll out today finds Americans' views on race relations have hit a 2-decade low. The CBS New York Times poll finds 61% of Americans now saying race relations are bad, compared to 34% who say they're good. Just last February, 52% said relations were good. That's an 18-point drop in 3 months. Monday on The Late Show with David Letterman, President Obama talked about what may be fueling this sentiment.
What you have are pockets of poverty, lack of opportunity, lack of education, all across this country. And too often we ignore those pockets until something happens. Essentially, we put the police officers in a really tough spot where we say to them, just contain the problem.
Letterman's last show, by the way, is May 20th. I just wanted to share that. The poll also found a black and white divide when it comes to policing. 81% of whites say police make them feel mostly safe, compared to 51%, barely a majority, of African Americans. And 42% of blacks say police make them feel mostly anxious. Last month, President Obama said tensions with police have been a slow-rolling crisis.
We have seen too many instances of what appears to be police officers interacting with individuals, primarily African American, often poor, in ways that raise troubling questions. And it comes up, it seems like, once a week now, or once every couple of weeks.
And if you want Exhibit A of one carefully choosing one's words, that was simply it, as Rick just muttered under his breath. Civil rights leaders such as the Reverend Al Sharpton say enough is enough.
There must be a national response to a national issue. And we can't keep running like hamsters on a treadmill from one town to the next. It's time for a national answer to a national crisis of policing.
Oh, you could run from one town to the next if you don't have to pay your taxes. And you have more money for transportation. Every time I see him, that's all I think of. It's like, he doesn't have to pay his... All right, Brad, is this more perception than reality, given all the negative headlines lately?
Well, look, you know what I believe. The only difference between perception and reality is that perception is harder to change. What I would like to remind Reverend Al, and I do understand, we do have a problem, but as H.L. Mencken said, for every complex problem, there is an answer that is simple, clear, and wrong.
I thought that was his brother Sal Mencken.
It was maybe at the Deli.
Oh,
no,
okay.
that's the point. There is no one answer here. And I will say this, I think as much as it might be a challenge of black and white, and that's part of it, it's also an issue of blue and green, by which I mean police culture. Let's remember, 3 of the people who are now arrested in Freddie Gray's death are people of color. Let's remember that poverty plays a role, and poverty, it's not that it's colorblind, we know it's overrepresented in some places and more in others, but if poverty and population density could be addressed, the blue and the green issues, and the blue here is police actually are part of a brother and sisterhood. And it's very hard to pull back from that when your life is being threatened to do your job. So I get it. Black and white is an issue, but so are blue and green, and we're going to need all the rainbow colors here to address if it's really a race issue.
With the poverty issue, there are more white poor people than all other poor people combined, and we don't have to talk about that enough. When President Obama was on Letterman and he's talking about the issues with poverty, he's not raising the issue that there are as many, if not more, white people who are dealing with that. You know, I was looking back today, knowing we were going to talk about this.
A lot of people, by the way, would be surprised to hear that stat.
I was surprised, you know, because he mentioned he's got this My Brother's Keeper that he's starting, and he mentioned in his speech Appalachia, which is a community that is very poor. Its majority is white. And so then you start thinking about those issues, and I looked, Martin Luther King actually started the Poor People's Campaign right before he died, when it was supposed to be a change between an era of civil rights to an era of human rights. And we totally have given that up. No one took up that baton and ran with it. And instead we've moved backwards to a day where all we talk about is the racial issues. And other things have to be part of this conversation.
My friends here today are unbelievably smart. Brad, I got to tell you something. You just did, this is why you get the big bucks. You just did
I hope
something.
someone is listening off this set.
You
and I don't mean God.
made a point that I've heard so many people call out, yeah, but 3 of those cops were black. You got to the point nobody's gotten to, which is it's the police culture. I'm going to be using that for the next 2 weeks. That
Green
was
and
so
blue,
good,
as
so
much as
good.
black and white.
But I do want to point out one thing about the poll. It's not at all uncommon to see big swings in poll numbers following a disaster. Right. So the first part of that poll, I really wouldn't put much credence in. I think that'll change. The second part of the poll is a different story. I think you would have seen the same thing before Baltimore as you're seeing after it. So I think that's where you have to focus your attention.
It's a culmination of events, right? Big media events.
This is how people
Trayvon Martin,
Right.
Ferguson,
Right.
now Baltimore. It seems to almost happen
And
on
you
cue.
want-
Every 4 months, you're going to get another big race story.
And I think if you went to into the black communities, even before those events, you would have found that disparity. They have difficulties with the police department. But both of you said some really on-the-money things. I'm going home. You guys are doing too well.
More
Well,
beer for us.
I think that when we talk about the other thing about, we talked about President Obama, and if it's since him racial relations has gotten worse, I think the expectations were so high. You know, I went back and looked, 70% of people the day after he was elected thought that racial relations would improve. That's high expectations. And so people are disappointed, and that naturally lends itself to a
And he was in
frustration.
a no-win. If it had gotten a lot better, everybody'd say, yeah, you did it for the black people because you're black.
Right.
If it doesn't get better, well, you ignored your people. You know, there was a no-win there.
Last word, 10 seconds.
Worth remembering, things can get better and worse at the same time. I think that's exactly what we're looking at. That we're talking about it this way as an improvement, that we still have this intractable problem means we got problems. Better and worse at the same time.
Well said. Coming up, Governor Mike Huckabee is in the presidential race, and Rick couldn't be any more excited. But does he have a chance? Don't go anywhere.